All right, guys, welcome back into another PGA DFS live video. Got the Rocket Mortgage Classic here that we're going to be covering for you. Do want to do some quick curtain call news here for you. I don't know if you guys saw on the Twitter page, but recently started a podcast covering the betting side of things. So if you guys want a little bit more betting specific content, check out the podcast. It's one of the recent tweets on Twitter, or head over to the 9 to 5 page. You can click on the podcast tab there and check it out. It's pretty solid. New guest in there for you guys is Hazy. We met at the DFS Open, had a really solid time there. So it was a really good chat. There's going to be more to come with that. Lots of top 40 outright winners on there. So definitely check that out. The Rocket Mortgage Classic this week, though, I'm pretty excited for it. I think this is going to be a pretty solid week, actually. The more I look at it, there's some names that are really sticking out to me. I do think that there's going to be a couple of players that we really like that will miss the cut, so might have to make a few lineups, just make some slight adjustments here and there to give yourself the most optimal path to have 6 for 6 across the cut line, and then obviously have those top 10 potentials. Yeah, so we already got a question coming in from Matthew here. He's wondering about the ground conditions. So I did see that. So last year I was actually supposed to play a lot thicker than it actually did. So it makes sense that it's going to be playing thicker this week, just because that's kind of how they always wanted it. That doesn't change what I was looking at all. I was already looking at that this week. You do need to hit the fairways here, and driving distance doesn't really matter too much. So it's really about the second shot and, just taking advantages of holes when they come up. It's going to be, I don't want to say it's going to be like last week, but it's somewhat going to be similar to that, where you will get penalized if you don't play the hole smart and, hit it well. But overall, none of the stats really changed at all for me. I was kind of already expecting that. Colin has a question about Hideki here. So Hideki, a lot of people had questions on Hideki, so I'm going to pull him up on the stat sheet. So my biggest problem with Hideki overall was mostly his price point. So we know Bryson, we know Webb, and Hatton are the top 3 to pay up for. Then we get Reed, Hideki, Hovland, Ricky, Tony, and then Watson. I would say that's kind of a tier in itself. Hideki's more on the top end of that, and after what we saw 2 weeks ago, it does worry me slightly. Now, Hideki has done really well at these types of courses before. Last year, he had a 13th finish, and then he had 2 top 11 finishes at a couple of other Donald Ross type courses. For those of you guys that don't know, Donald Ross is the course designer of this course. So that's why we're going to be looking at that as well. But Hideki does grade out as a great play. If he was a good putter, and his driving accuracy is kind of iffy there, I don't know if we have to worry about that too much, but that's pretty concerning that both of those have been poor. I do think he'll make the cut, and I do think he's a fine play, but my problem with him is the high end that he's at. I was just reading Chris's comment, but he'll probably retype it there. Let's get into some other questions here. Let me pull it up. So I had a lot of questions about Lanto Griffin, so I don't mind the play. I do want to talk about my specific strategy with this. So a lot of the times in PGA DFS, and I know it's early on, so we can't exactly do the strategy, I want to see at least 3 made cuts in a row. Now, yes, the lower you go down in salary, the less likely you are to find that. And if it's not 3 made cuts in a row, typically I want to see a guy that, at least played well, at least was right around the cut. Maybe the cut just didn't go in their favor. The first 2 weeks, Lanto really did struggle. It was absolutely horrible, okay? That's my biggest worries with Lanto, pretty much. Now, if he goes off and does well the first round and second round, I would expect him to do poorly in the third round, but then maybe becomes a showdown option. So I am keeping my eye on him. I'm just not going there just yet. I do like to see at least another made cut in there. So he's definitely on the radar. Maybe that might be more of a next week play. That goes back to my basic line of construction. My whole process is trying to get 6 for 6 across the cut line. That is my main focus in PGA DFS. I don't look at upside as much, because the more times you get 6 for 6 across the cut line, the more times you're going to give yourself a chance to win. If you did that last week, you didn't sit in, darn pretty. So that's why that's my main focus. And that's kind of why some of these guys that might pop, if you're looking at the short-term stats and the short-term recent form, that's why they might pop for some other people, where I'm going more for the 6 for 6. I'm going for that, long-term success. Bezuidenhout, so I'm fine with him as a play. For me, that was another guy where the price point just doesn't match what I want, if you will. He should be fine for this course. The problem with him is that you got Doc Redman right there, you got Lucas Glover right there, you got Adam Hadwin right there, a little bit lower, you got Snedeker and Brian Harman. I would grade Brian Harman as a better play than Bezuidenhout. So that's kind of my worry with him, is that sometimes there's just better plays in that range. If he was $1,000 cheaper, sure, I'd pull the trigger, but I just don't like him too much at that price point. All right, so I'm reading Chris's message now. Yeah, so the betting podcast, it'll probably have to be a Tuesday night thing there, Chris. Would like to do a little bit sooner, but we got the Monday video that's always going to be posted, the core plays video. Then Tuesday, I think, will be dedicated to like betting, and then we'll look the last resort betting there on Wednesday and get the final stuff out there to see how much has changed. So yeah, it's definitely just a scheduling thing, because I want to keep it a Monday core play video, Tuesday betting podcast, and then just the live stream here on Wednesday. So that is going to be the schedule going forward. I'll have to update the slide there below. We'll get into a couple of FanDuel plays, and I'll come back to the common questions. If you guys have any questions, make sure to get them in as always. So before last week, there's some really easy value on FanDuel. And see, we got it right away. Kitayama on FanDuel, it was stuck out quite a bit there for his price point, and even on Yahoo, and I'll touch on that in a second. So I don't want to say you have to lock him in, because I think his ownership will be really high on FanDuel, but I don't know how many casual golf fans are going to see it. So it's kind of an interesting one. So I don't think we have to worry about ownership too much. If he was in the field the whole time, maybe, but his price point on FanDuel is just too appealing. You kind of just have to roll with it there. But then there are some other nice value plays on FanDuel here. So not last week, but the previous 2 weeks, there was 2 minimum price guys on FanDuel that we hit on. It was Jim Furyk and I think Doc Redman. And now we get Tim Wilkinson, who I think, if you guys listen to the betting podcast, I touched on him quite a bit. I think he's one of my favorite bets to just top 40. And I think if he does make the cut, he has a great shot to go out on top 25. I already touched on it in the core plays video, but 5 out of his 6 made cuts have been top 25 finishes or top 30 finishes. So I do really like that. I do think he has top 20 upside. And that's minimum price on FanDuel, and he's pretty cheap on DraftKings as well. And then DJ Trahan, yes, he's more of a GPP play, but he can definitely have some low scores. Maybe more of a long shot bet. It's not the safest play, but he does hold, more upside, I guess, than someone like Wilkinson. And then Hatton. I was pretty surprised about Hatton, because for me, I'm seeing Hatton and Webb and Bryson all on the same tier. Okay, Hatton on the year has 8th overall finish in all of his starts this year. It's pretty spectacular. Okay. And he's $1,000 cheaper than those two. So on FanDuel, you kind of just have to go with Hatton, I think, if you're trying to pay up for one of those studs. And then Stewart and Hubbard, I just think they're too cheap for a made cut. Those two should make the cut, and they're just a little bit too cheap for me. All right, so we got a question from Jordan. Go back to the question slide here. So pick 2, Bazzelli, Duncan, Uline, West Bryant, and Bramlett. I need to learn how to say his name, Joseph there. So Tyler Duncan for sure. He's great form. I do like his price on DraftKings. I'm assuming you're playing on DraftKings there. And then I do want to go Wes Bryan, but he does seem to be a little bit more popular than he should. I know Bramlett was popping for me quite a bit. So I don't think you have to worry about value ownership really ever. It's never going to get too high. So I would go Duncan and Bryan. But if you did want to diversify a little bit Bryan is a popular value play this week, then Bramlett would be the play there. But it's a pretty good question. I do like Duncan quite a bit. The problem I've had this week, and I'll just mention, is I've had like 600, 700 left over a ton on DraftKings, and I've had to end up with Duncan because he's kind of in a tier of his own there. So that's my biggest worry about it. Kitayama, 2 out of 3 lineups, too much on FanDuel. No, I think that's about right. It really does depend on how many lineups you do. You definitely do want to fade him in one because his ownership could get pretty high. DFS Chef is in here. Nice to see you, man. Hope everything's well. So yeah, Harmon is a very interesting play to me. His price point is great. I didn't end up on him that much, although he is one of the biggest head scratchers I've had this week. I feel like I am making a mistake not having him in my player pool, but it's more one of those cases where I just had to make a cutoff point, and he was that guy. I'm a little bit too worried about that. Yeah, so I thought I messed up the Bryant Kitayama price on FanDuel. Is that right? 7-7 on FanDuel. I'll have to update that. Whatever, we got it there. I thought I messed it up, but Tringale's fine. I think there's better value plays, but I don't want to talk you out of that one. He's not on my player pool, but I'm fine with it. He should make the cut. It's okay. So some Yahoo plays. Do want to mention it? Kitayama stuck out on there. I know some of you guys play Yahoo. It's just another way to look at it. So Haddon and Kitayama, that's where you want to play these guys on FanDuel and on Yahoo. It's not a bad option, if to play on multiple sites for this reason, because you get different price points. And then Doc Redman, just way too cheap on Yahoo. Just way too cheap. You got to play him on Yahoo. And then once again, Stuart Hubbard, definitely way too cheap. All right, so no Seamus Power. I didn't even realize he was in the field. Let me pull him up here. That's how much he didn't pop for me. So I want to see what you're seeing there. Let me pull him up. Okay. He ranks out as someone that should be right around the cut line for me. He does have 2 missed cuts on Donald Ross courses, one last year at this course and then one at the other one. I don't know. I would try to go somewhere else. I hate talking people out of plays. I never want to do that. I would rather just say, make another lineup without him. DFS Chef is saying McNeely over Harmon this week. That price point range is very tricky. I'm going to pull it up here right now. It's literally the price point that could make or break the slate, because you got Varner right there. I think Scott Stallings has shown some great form. You got Stewart a little bit lower. You got Norn and Todd. I mean, that's kind of where I'm like, I might just need to make another build with that. So I'm just going to talk about those two real quick since you mentioned it. McNeely does grade out pretty solid. He doesn't make that many bogeys. He has a very solid bogey or birdie to bogey ratio, which I think grades out really well this week. And he's a par 5 scorer as well, so he should be able to take advantage of that to be able to make the cut. Now, I do think that Brian Harmon holds a lot more upside. We saw him really come on right before break, and now the previous 2 weeks prior to last week. So he does grade out pretty much the same, but I think he holds more upside. I didn't end up on either of those two, but I definitely do get it. Ownership on Webb on DK. So this week, to be honest with you, I haven't really looked at ownership too much. I don't think that this is a week that we need to overcomplicate it. Play the guys that you like and get that 6 or 6 across the cut line, and then you'll be profitable this week. Don't really think about ownership that much this week. I think it'll be spread out pretty well between Bryson, Webb, and Hatton. So that's kind of the route I'm going. I know that there's some guys that I'm really high on that might have high ownerships, and I might just eat the chalk in that. But it's kind of a week where we have to play the players that DraftKings has given us at their price points and just kind of deal with it because of the right plays. Where, last week was a little bit difficult. We knew it was going to be a studs and duds week. That was more of an ownership week. This is more of one where you just got to play the correct plays. So I did get asked quite a bit, Bryson, Webb, and Hatton, and you guys kind of got my thoughts on that with FanDuel and Yahoo. Hatton's way too cheap on those two sites, so if you're playing on FanDuel or Yahoo, go with Hatton. I do like Webb the most out of those three slightly, just because we've seen the winning upside with him, and he has 2 straight top 5 finishes at a Donald Ross courses. He's just a really great stat fit. Now, Bryson and Hatton, it's pulling hairs. You could go with any one of those guys. Kevin Chappell, top 10. See, that's why I'm doing the betting podcast, because I'm not touching Kevin Chappell in DraftKings this week. But it does make sense to try to throw him at a top 10 and you don't have to waste the whole lineup on it. I do get that. Yeah, Chris, so about the podcast real quick. It was kind of just a soft opening, get the content out there. It's kind of more of a practice run. So in the weeks to come, it'll be a lot more formal and a lot, better, I guess, in general. So it was definitely more of a soft opening. We'll kind of hype it up here in the next coming weeks. And so DFS Chef, just reading it. Yeah, power. I agree with that take. And then, so next best on the top end. So that was another question I got quite a bit. I already talked about Hideki, but I've been really leaning towards Victor Hovland. I just love the recent form. I love that he had a top 13 finish here last year. And just overall, he's a really solid stat fit for this course. He's a guy that should make the cut and could be in contention for the win. Now, I don't think he'll win. I think he'll probably choke if he gets there. But I also do like Sungjae Im quite a bit. I know he struggled recently, but on the betting podcast, I just kind of like the thought process with it. We saw Webb miss a cut and then go out and win. We saw DJ kind of struggle since break and then go out and win. These high caliber players will eventually figure it out, and normally it takes a lot less time to figure it out. And I think Sungjae Im is one of those elite players, and I think he could potentially go out and win. He's a very solid stat fit all around. He ranks top 10 according to my model this week, so I do really like Sungjae Im. Those are my top two. The only problem with it is that I could not fit both of them into my cash builds this week. And I'll tell you guys what, I was ending up 100 short of getting Harold Varner in a build, which I would have been very comfortable with. And it's one of those weeks where that's pretty unfortunate. It's probably the worst part about DFS is when you're 100 short on a build. Or 100 over, I should say. And then a lot of the times people will ask me, the player I am on more now than I was on Monday. And I just brought him up. It's Harold Varner. Now, my worry is that people just saw him play the 9 holes on PGA Tour Live and will increase his ownership a little bit more than he should be. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet 2 days ago, I think it was. I was comparing Varner and Scheffler to each other. They're pretty much the exact same play, but Varner's a lot cheaper, and I think he holds just as much upside. So that's kind of why I'm rolling with him a little bit more. Yes, he's a little bit more of a GPP risk, but he's a solid play. I am not going to roll a day in a couple of my builds. It kind of goes back to the thing where I need to see it a little bit more. But once again, we know he's an elite player. Once he figures it out, he'd be solid. But I don't want to take that risk of not getting a cut there. He is priced at the appropriate spot, though, so I get it. Any Wyndham Clark interest? So, yeah, Wyndham Clark was one of the last players that I didn't have in my player pool. I thought long and hard about that one, and I didn't roll with him. So if you're on him, not going to talk you out of it. I get to play quite a bit there. All right, so you guys know what the screen is. I'm going to be wrapping up here pretty shortly. So get your questions in, and then I'll be closing up here. So any interest in Matthew Wolff? Not this week, no. I do worry about his driving accuracy. This is a course where he could struggle, and so that's my biggest worry with him. Hovland, Redmond, HV3. Yeah, and see, this goes back to I don't think we have to worry about ownership too much this week. Just play your guys this week and hope that it does well, pretty much. Donnie. Okay. Is that a Monday qualifier, Theo? I don't see that guy. See, if it is Monday qualifiers, I'll pull up real quick, see if I like him, and then just not even think about it. So if he was, not even thinking about it. Do want to mention the membership page. So $10 a month, guys. It's pretty solid. Sample build, video breakdown. That's free. Posted on Monday. Give you guys, the weekly analysis that normally comes out on Tuesday afternoon, but it's been coming out really early because DraftKings has doing a great job of getting out their prices. So I've been able to get that content out earlier on Monday. Core plays, value plays, lineup construction, always available for questions via chat or email. Pretty much any way people want to reach out to me, I get it done for you guys. So And then Wednesday adjustments. So I'll be sending out some, Wednesday adjustments after this video and giving those out to those members. So if you guys want to check that out, it's $10 a month. You guys can cancel whenever too if you want. If you guys are sick of playing PGA DFS when NBA rolls around, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, so yeah, Theo, that's kind of my process there. So not popping for me. All right, I'll be wrapping up here in about a minute or so. So if you don't have any more questions, I'll be wrapping up here. And just so you guys know, I'm just looking at the mobile version of the stat sheet on my phone. That's why I keep looking over. So don't like to have that pulled up on the screen. Yeah, so that's kind of my thing with Kitayama is that I don't want to play him on DraftKings just because of that price point. I think Hadwin is a little bit better. I'd rather pay up for Glover or Redmond if you could. I'm not playing Brian Harmon or Alex Noren, but I'd rather play those guys a little bit more. But Kitayama on FanDuel and Yahoo, that's where I'm playing him quite a bit. My problem with Kitayama is that if he was priced by Varner, Stewart, and like Hubbard and those guys, even Keegan Bradley, then I would think about it, but he'd still be like the last man on the total poll for me there. Those are all guys that I think are priced too low, though. That's why I brought it up. Xinjiang Zhang. I always mess up his name. Not on him. Not on this week. He's another guy where I need to see it a little bit more. EVR. So Eric Van Rooyen, fine with that play. I'm pulling his stats up too. He's another one of those guys where we haven't touched on him, just so you know there. It's just the price point range for me. I don't like him at his price point. If he was $1,000 cheaper, probably. It's just going to be a stay away from me. Kind of goes back to what I just said. I would rather be on Hadwin, Glover, Redmond, Snedeker, or just go down a little bit more. So I don't think there's going to be as much return on investment, although I'm not going to talk you out of that play. I don't think he's a bad play. I think he'll make the cut. Kevin Na. So I heard some horrible takes on Kevin Na this week. I'm going to let you decide what that means. He's a GPP only play. I'll put it that way. Yes, he can go off, but at that price point, he should be low owned, which could benefit you in GPPs. And we know he does have the upside, but do not play him in cash, please. It's not the right play in cash. He is a fine stat fit, though. I'm really mad about Harris English being gone out this week. Really sucked. He was a top 5 play for me this week. Cameron Champ was a top 5 play for me last week. I really think if Champ was in the player pool last week, if he could have played, it would have been a really great week just because he was priced way too low, and it would have been nice to be on him. Zach Blair. Let's pull him up. So Zach Blair, yeah, he caught my eye slightly for a second. I've already touched on a couple of other value plays that I like a little bit better lower on because there's a few solid value plays this week that, yes, we know they're value plays. They're priced that way for a reason. Tim Wilkinson's a guy that I think will make the cut. And I'd rather go with him. I think he's like 200 more. And then DJ Trahan, great upside play. So Wesley Bryan, yeah. So DFS Chef says he's not sneaky. Wesley Bryan, this is where it gets interesting because we are the people that play PGA DFS quite a bit. We do the ins and outs of it, okay? So to us, he's not sneaky. To the general public, maybe it will be a little bit sneaky. But he's had a lot of hype on Twitter. He's been on TV, more recently. So it's tough to say if he's sneaky, especially to us, because we know that he's, played well so far. And, 2 straight make cuts at his price point, that is what you want to look for. This kind of goes back to it where I don't think you have to worry about ownership. If you like him and you think he's going to make the cut, play him because that's a good price point. Miami Mike, that's that's what it was. But I get it for GPPs. He should be low owned. Kevin Nash should be low owned. Brendan Todd. So Todd is an interesting one too. This is another one where I do not think you should play him in cash. This is a GPP only play. I think him and Kevin Na are pretty much kind of the same play, but we're getting Brendan Todd a lot cheaper. and that's kind of goes back to why I'd rather play Varner and Scotty Scheffler. They're pretty much the same play, except Varner's a lot cheaper. It's kind of the same thing with Brendan Todd and Kevin Na, to be honest with you. Driving accuracy is great with Brendan Todd, and he's great at the birdie to bogey ratio, so he should make the cut. And we've seen the upside with Brendan Todd, so I don't mind it as a GPP play, but just don't play him in cash. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think everyone got their questions in. If you didn't, feel free to, put some comments in there in the Twitter posts from the live video chat, or any of the recent ones. I'll be happy to help you guys out. Thanks everyone for joining here, and let's have a good week, and as always, let's keep cashing.